Saudi Arabia versus Iran. It's a rivalry that has defined the Middle East for decades. A bitter conflict fought with proxy wars, sectarian divides, and a constant struggle for who gets to call the shots in the region. The headlines all paint a picture of two sworn enemies, locked in a game where only one can win. But what if that's only half the story? What if behind all the public shouting, there's a hidden history of secret deals, pragmatic handshakes, and genuinely surprising cooperation? What if for every public threat, there was a quiet backchannel? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the secret ties between Saudi Arabia and Iran, the ones that fly in the face of their public rivalry. To get the secret, you first have to get the public story. For the better part of 40 years, the relationship has been plain toxic. Everything changed in 1979. The Iranian Revolution didn't just get rid of a king, it completely flipped the regional order on its head. Suddenly you had a revolutionary theocracy in Tehran with a clear mission to export its ideology. For the conservative monarchy in Saudi Arabia, which saw itself as the leader of the Sunni Muslim world, this wasn't just a problem, it was an existential threat. And just like that, the stage was set for decades of conflict. When Iraq invaded Iran in 1980, Saudi Arabia poured money and logistics into supporting Baghdad, seeing it as a shield against Iranian influence. By the late 80s, relations had totally fallen apart, leading to a break in diplomatic ties after a deadly clash during the Hajj pilgrimage in Mecca in 1987. From there, the rivalry went into the shadows, playing out in a series of devastating proxy wars. From Syria to Yemen, Tehran and Riyadh backed opposite sides, turning local conflicts into their own personal Cold War battlegrounds. Things got heated again in 2016, when Saudi Arabia executed a prominent Shia cleric. Protesters stormed the Saudi embassy in Tehran, and Riyadh's response was to sever diplomatic ties completely. That freeze would last for 7 years. This is the story we all think we know, but it isn't the whole story. To find the first real thread of cooperation, you have to rewind the clock, back to a time before the revolution, when the crowns of Iran and Saudi Arabia were actually on the same side. In the 1960s and 70s, both countries were monarchies, and just as importantly, they were the two main pillars of American foreign policy in the Gulf. Thanks to the Cold War, they shared a common enemy in Soviet influence and Arab nationalism, especially from Nasser's Egypt. This wasn't just a passive friendship, they were actively working together. Both were founding members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and they even joined something called the Safari Club, an anti-communist intelligence alliance. There was military teamwork too. When South Yemen launched air raids against Saudi Arabia, Iran actually sent military support. They even managed to settle a maritime border dispute in 1969, which showed they could be pragmatic. In fact, just a year before the revolution, in 1978, Saudi Crown Prince Fahd was in Tehran talking about a regional security pact. Before they were bitter rivals, they were partners, working together to protect their thrones and secure Western interests. The 1979 revolution didn't just create an enemy for Saudi Arabia, it destroyed an ally. Even after 1979, when the public attacks were at their worst, that pragmatism never truly vanished. It just went underground. Over the years, big crises often pushed the two rivals into quiet, unacknowledged talks to manage the tension and make sure they didn't stumble into a direct, catastrophic war. The first major thaw happened in the late 1990s. The reformist Mohammad Khatami became president of Iran, and the whole tone started to change. In 1998, the two countries signed a comprehensive cooperation agreement, a pretty shocking pact that covered everything from economics and culture to sports. That was followed by something even bigger in 2001, a security cooperation agreement. Now, it didn't include direct military collaboration, but it was a promise to respect each other's sovereignty, and critically, to not support groups trying to cause chaos for the other. It created a formal, though rarely used, way for them to share intelligence on mutual threats like terrorism and organized crime. And these agreements weren't just for show. The Joint Security Committee they created actually met in 2001 and again in 2008 to talk about putting it to use. It proved that even while they were backing opposing sides in places like Iraq and Lebanon, they always kept a line open. It was a quiet admission of a simple fact: we can't get rid of them, and they can't get rid of us. After the Arab Spring kicked off in 2011, the rivalry heated up like never before. But behind the scenes, the need to cool things down was more urgent than ever. This led to a series of secret talks, usually with a middleman helping out. Starting in 2021, officials from Iran and Saudi Arabia started meeting secretly in Baghdad, with Iraq and Oman playing the role of mediators. These weren't low-level chats either. The delegations were led by top intelligence and national security officials. They met for 5 rounds in Iraq, patiently laying the foundation to pull the region back from the brink of a major war. The main driver was simple risk management. For Saudi Arabia, the 2019 attacks on its Aramco oil facilities were a huge wake-up call, showing just how vulnerable its economy really was. For Iran, crippling international sanctions and protests at home created a strong reason to lower the temperature and find some economic relief. All of that quiet, patient diplomacy led to the bombshell announcement in March 2023. With China's help, Saudi Arabia and Iran agreed to restore full diplomatic relations. The world was shocked, but it wasn't a sudden move at all. It was the direct result of years of secret handshakes and back-channel talks in Baghdad and Muscat. The deal even explicitly brought back those old security and economic pacts from 1998 and 2001, pulling 2 decades of secret diplomacy out of the shadows and into the light. So, if these threads of cooperation have been there all along, why all the secrecy? Why keep up this public show of non-stop hostility? It really gets to the heart of each nation's identity and its strategy for political survival. First, you have to look at their domestic politics. For decades, leaders in both Tehran and Riyadh have used the rivalry to make themselves look stronger at home. In Iran, standing up to the American agent Saudi Arabia is a basic part of its revolutionary identity. In Saudi Arabia, being the kingdom that stands firm against Iranian expansion is key to its claim as the protector of Sunni Islam and leader of the Arab world. For leaders on either side, being seen as soft on the enemy is a massive political risk. Second, it's about managing their friends and allies. Both countries lead complicated networks of allies and proxy groups across the region. Openly cooperating with the enemy would confuse and possibly alienate these partners, many of whom are all in on the conflict. The rivalry is a powerful way to organize the region, and taking it apart in public could have totally unpredictable results. Finally, there's the deep, unshakable mistrust. Despite the pragmatic handshakes, neither side has forgotten why they're enemies in the first place. Saudi Arabia is still incredibly nervous about Iran's nuclear program and its network of armed groups. Iran is still deeply suspicious of Saudi Arabia's close relationship with the United States and its funding of opposition media. So the cooperation has always been a way of hedging their bets, a tool to manage risk, not a real step toward friendship. The secrecy lets them de-escalate without ever having to officially back down or betray their core beliefs. The 2023 deal has kicked off a new, uncertain chapter. High-level visits that were once unthinkable are starting to happen more often. In April 2025, the Saudi defense minister visited Tehran for the highest-level meeting in almost 20 years, a pretty clear signal that they're serious about this détente. The intelligence sharing, which used to be occasional, seems to be getting deeper. There are reports that Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states passed intelligence to the US about Iran's planned attack on Israel in 2024. A very complicated move that shows how these new communication channels are being used to stop conflicts from spiraling out of control. It's all part of a new Saudi strategy of positive neutrality, which is driven by its huge Vision 2030 plan. That plan needs regional stability to have any chance of success. Riyadh has even reportedly told Washington that it won't let its territory or airspace be used for any potential strikes against Iran. But does this mean the rivalry is over? That's highly unlikely. The deep-seated suspicions are still there. Both sides are still hedging their bets, keeping their militaries and alliances ready in case this whole thing falls apart. The best way to describe the relationship today is a regulated coexistence, a shift from open conflict to an armed and extremely cautious peace. The story of Saudi Arabia and Iran isn't a simple story of good guys and bad guys. It's a complex dance of power, pragmatism, and survival, acted out through public threats and secret handshakes. The rivalry is absolutely real, but so is the cooperation. For every proxy war, there has been a backchannel. For every angry accusation, a quiet negotiation. The big question now is whether this peace deal, brokered by China, can actually last. Are we finally seeing a real shift towards stability, pushed by economic needs and a shared fear of a catastrophic war? Or is this just another temporary thaw in a long-running Cold War, one that's doomed to freeze over again as soon as the strategic picture changes? The secret ties are now out in the open, but the future of the Middle East is still hanging in the balance. What do you think? Is this the start of a real peace, or just a pause in the fighting? Let us know down in the comments. And if you want to understand the complex stories behind the headlines, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what's